So thank you everyone for coming tonight. We're going to do a few different things tonight in this virtual high school panel. The intention for this evening is for our middle school families and prospective middle school families to hear the perspective of our students and parents in our high school program from their own words. So I've invited some of those students and parents to come to be with us virtually tonight to talk about their own personal experiences at LCWS High School. And first, I'm going to start by just giving you a little bit of a view into what our high school has been doing this year. And Emily Fuchs, our high school humanities teacher, will talk a little bit about the high school program in general. So I'm just going to share with you, oops, let's see if I can get to my next screen. Just one second. There we go. This is for this year, the main lesson block schedule for the high schoolers. You can see the blocks that we've covered this fall range from humanities and science to an outdoor trip, the canoeing and camping trip. And then coming up in the winter and spring, we have another series of really in-depth main lessons that we'll be exploring. So the main lesson block schedule for the upcoming school year is in process of being determined right now, and we'll be sharing that information as soon as it's kind of closer to nailed down. But this is an example of what the high schoolers have been exploring this year and will continue to. And then I also wanted to give you just a picture of what the weekly schedule looks like so that you can have an understanding of what they're doing each day, starting the day with morning movement, just like they have at our school since first grade, and then main lesson, again, repeating that same pattern since first grade, spending the bulk of the morning immersed in that main lesson block. And then after a break, so between main lesson, it's not shown here, between main lesson and the next subject period, there is a significant break where the students get to have their morning snack and have some time to run around outside and just enjoy themselves and socialize. And then they move into their subject classes for 2 periods that you can see. They have lunch after those first 2 periods, and then there are additional subject periods. You can see that there are, there's a mistake on here. I'm missing one of those blocks, but there is a double period on several days of the week in the afternoon where the students are studying fine arts and performing arts and social entrepreneurship for an extended period of time. So now I'd love to turn it over to Emily to share a bit about the approach in high school.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. Some of you may have this may be familiar because I spoke about it in a little more depth at the parent evening that we had about a week ago. So if it's a little bit old news, sorry. But Amy asked me to do a broad overview of what is consistent from our Waldorf middle school curriculum and development into what is different in the high school. And so the things that are the same are a lot of the things that really make Waldorf education what it is. There's the really important social connection and relationship that we ask the students to build with the different aspects of their life. So their peers, their teachers, the natural world around them, their physical spaces. And that importance of connection and community remains absolutely the same. And we make sure that the students are really seen for who they are, that they're not, they can't hide, which is sometimes uncomfortable for students, but really important for any growing individual to be able to be seen for who they are and who they can become. The developmental education is still the same. We're working with the same principles of thinking, feeling, willing, knowing that at every developmental stage in life, students are experiencing something unique and important. And the more that we can bring curriculum content to them that in some ways reflects or matches or helps work through what the changes that they're going through as they develop, that the more important that is for the students. So just as class teachers would take the children through the 9-year-old or the 12-year-old change, the high school teachers will help students through all of the other changes that happen in their inner and outer world in high school. There's also another thing that's consistent is the expectations around excellence in not just academics. So if a student is struggling with a social issue or not living up their full potential in cleaning, for example, that's something that the teachers try to notice and help ask them, how can we help? What supports can we give you? How can we help you build this muscle? So it's not just, can you develop your intellect, but what are the other aspects of being a human being that we can help you develop? And then some of the really big things that are different are really in sort of 3 big categories. One is a little more opening up to the world, and this happens through longer trips, through more and more and extensive connections with people in the community, being able to interact with real experts and adults in their field is really important for students to see all of the possibilities of who they can be as people. And it also, another piece of opening up more is opening up for a little more failure. In the grade school, there tends to be a little more holding around making mistakes or getting something wrong or having a, failing in a class, which is not to say that students fail in classes, but we give them a little more of an opportunity to work through challenges and understand what it's like when they don't succeed and let them know that that's okay and they can do better. So they're less protected from an experience of challenge or that they need to persevere through. The second really big category of difference is the individuation that happens in the high school. There's more opportunity for students to take different classes. We have some electives to join and try on different parts of themselves and have a different relationship to teachers and authority, one more out of understanding that every teacher is really trying to be a striving human being and going through their own stuff on their way. And high school is where the students themselves can see that in their teachers and form a relationship that's a little less formal and a little more mature. And then finally, and this is, well, they're all important, but one of the most important ones is the development of the intellect that happens in the high school. And this is different, significantly different than the learning of the content that might happen in the grade school. This is where students really learn how to think, how to reason through something, how to make sure that you can see different particular outcomes, how you can use logic to go through particular decisions. And this is something that I feel is critical to our time right now, is that students and young people in this day and age will no longer lack for content. They will almost always be able to find anything they ever want to know. It's not hard to find information anymore. But are we able to give them the tools to know what to do with that information? Can they be successful in finding the truth of the information, of connecting the pieces of information and of coming up with their own understanding of that information. So that's a very brief overview. And as always, I love talking about this. So any further questions we can answer later on when we have Q&A or anytime.
Thank you so much, Emily. So like Emily mentioned, we will have a questions and answers portion of the evening after we hear from some of our other panelists. So the next thing I wanted to get to was to turn it over to a few of our parents who have joined us tonight to give them an opportunity to just speak briefly about their own personal experience being part of Lake Champlain Waldorf School at the high school level, or something significant that they'd like to share. So Jen and Greg, would you like to start?
Yeah, hi. We had sort of a unique entry into Lake Champlain Waldorf because we started at the high school. So Greg is a Waldorf kindergarten teacher over here in New York, and so our kids did the early childhood piece here and then went to our public school for, Ren went all through the grades and Elle went through up until middle school. And Ren approached us and said, is there something else? Is there something different? I don't think I can do worksheets and vomiting out information that I was given that day. And I don't think I can sit in class with people who are actively trying to derail the teacher's train of thought because they're not interested in what we're learning. And so she was craving being around like-minded people and artistic people and sort of people who knew her and saw her, where she wasn't just sort of a face in the crowd. And to be clear, our public high school is tiny. I mean, she still only had 20 people in her class. And we said, yeah, there's another option. And so she went over there and interviewed and loved it from the very beginning. And the first week when she came home, the two things that she said were different was that, one, the space between the teachers and the students was smaller, and everyone wanted to be there. So I think that those were like, just that she felt community and colleagueship and felt known and seen by her teachers, like after a week of being there, sort of made any sort of adjustment period really fall away, I think.
I think one of the other important things that I noticed is contrasting it with me when I came out of high school into college. I really made that transformation of finding out who I was and was much more comfortable in being who I was. And with Ren going from public middle school to Waldorf high school, I saw that transition I had from high school to college, she had from middle school to high school. So I really saw that comfort level of trying new things, being something else than what I'm expected to be. That was a big thing that I really thought Waldorf delivered well on.
And Elle is a freshman this year, and with the high school being so small, and something that we really celebrated about Waldorf really meeting each developmental stage sort of where the student was, we were a little worried that having Elle and Ren in the same class would somehow dilute that. But it's really been this amazing opportunity for them to share the curriculum, but meet it at different levels, and the conversations that they have about textiles or Siddhartha or whatever is happening for them to be able to chat about that and to understand one another has just been this real extra bonus that we weren't expecting.
Great, thank you so much, both of you. Anna, would you like to share some of your experience?
Yes, thank you. Hello. It's so good to be here. It was so good to hear everyone who spoke already, and I'm just smiling and nodding along like, yes, yes, yes. So Karia is our kiddo, and Karia is in 9th grade, and they transferred from a public high school, a public middle school, and after having done a public elementary school, but did do kindergarten and preschool at the Orchard Valley Waldorf School, which is out our way where we are in Central Vermont, and we started noticing in middle school just a lot of shutting down of interests one by one, and sort of like a hardening off that was happening, and not the kind of growth that we had hoped for them during those years. They were really in like a protective mode, and there was some like real harm done to them at their school. So we were actively searching for alternatives when we didn't have the kind of support from the administration that we needed. We also noticed that when middle school started, screen time was the center of the educational experience. Being in front of a laptop, the school issues every child a laptop, and Karia was on their screen all day long, and really hated that a lot. And we saw just the disconnection from the world that was happening, and a lot of disconnection. I'd say disconnection was a big theme of that time, and we knew we wanted more connection and more time interacting with the natural world and with other people face to face, and really with a focus on social health also. And it seems like a really lofty wishes, but that's what we knew they needed, and we were so thrilled to find that at LCWS, just in oodles and oodles. From the start. Karia visited. We went through the process of learning about the school and meeting the teachers and some of the other students, and it just felt Karia just was overwhelmingly positive about every step of the way. So it kind of was very natural, and they transferred, and we were a little like, what's the transition going to be like over the summer? Very optimistic, but still kind of was a question mark. And the transition was so smooth and easy and seamless, and I think in part because of the warmth of the environment and how welcome Karia felt or was made to feel. So we didn't really, there were some very healthy challenges that went along with that I think helped them grow a lot and continue to help them grow. But just positive challenges. And I think the way the faculty supported those was ideal. So it's been a tremendously positive transition and so much growth for Karia, and like we're seeing as a reemergence of their spirit, their curiosity. We see them exploring all these connections between the humanities and the sciences, which I think this approach really leans into, and makes learning really fun. Karia seems to have so much fun with the learning. And it's definitely rigorous and challenging. And they've learned some really important time management skills so far this year. I can't believe it's only been a few months, actually. So there's just been so much positive growth. So we're just really grateful to the community and educators there for all their support, and looking forward to what's to come.
Thank you so much, Anna. You said so much in such a short time. I appreciate your sharing all of that. I'm going to invite the students to share a bit of their experiences as well next. And just while they are doing that, I want to invite all of the attendees who are watching to be thinking about questions that you would like to send in through the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen there. That's how you'll be able to send the questions that you have, either for the parents that are here, the students that are here, or teachers. And I'll be collecting those questions to give to our panelists after the students who are with us today give a little bit of their perspective. So I'm going to let the students take it from here. And I wonder if they would like to be called on, or if they would like to volunteer. Who wants to go first?
Katie and I will start.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You can, because you have the experience. Well, I've been at this school since kindergarten, and I felt the whole time such an appreciation for the community and the way I've been taught, and the seamless way that you transition from point to point in your life. I felt every step of the way that I was being supported in the way I needed, and that my growth and like my aging as I grow up are so naturally supported in the way that I've been taught and the way I've been learning. I appreciate that so much. My class size has really fluctuated throughout the years, and as I've gotten older, it's gotten a lot smaller. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate the closeness of the community that we have in such a small group, and the ability that the teachers have in a small class to really be able to make personal connections with students and be able to focus on students. When you say, like, I don't understand something, could I have some help? The teachers are there and can support you personally in what you need, and what you can walk out of those classes having had enough support and attention to be able to grow and learn. I appreciate that so much, and particularly in the high school, in my first year in the high school, I'm a freshman, I have felt really heard and listened to as I continue to learn, and both in the community and in my classes. And I think that's such a valuable skill to have in school and to be offered in my learning journey. And I'm really happy about that.
Hi, I'm Karia. As my mom said, I transitioned to LCWS from a pretty toxic environment in which my confidence really took a hit, and I was kind of fading into this little shell of who I was. And I knew that I needed a change, so I came here. And I just really appreciate the way that people are accepting of flaws while still supporting positive growth with constructive criticism. So I've just really noticed that I've grown a lot in the way that I interact with other people, and my confidence has gone up significantly, and I still have things to work on, but I just really appreciate the way that LCWS fosters that growth and makes a little pocket of the world that is so positive and happy, and just makes me feel so good about myself and about other people. And like Katie said, I really enjoy the tight-knit community. I feel that I really know and love everyone, and it's just so nice and positive and happy. And when there are problems, they're not pushed under a carpet. It's always a big conversation, and we have so many conversations about these things. But everything is resolved in a way where there is closure, and I really appreciate that. So, super positive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karia and Katie. Elle, would you like to share a bit of your experience?
Yeah.
Great.
I kind of feel like I'm sort of repeating what people have already said, because it's just like,
that's okay.
I don't know. Like, for example, well, I started in 7th grade. I'm a freshman now, so haven't been here that long, but like I honestly can't imagine really going to school anywhere else because like I don't think that I would be able to find like the growth and like acceptance that like this school provides. Like with the teachers, their understanding, and like my mom and dad, Jen and Greg, said, like the gap is much smaller and there's like much more of an understanding, like with still being like that respect there for the teachers. And like if you have a bad day, like the teachers will ask you like, what can I do to help? Do you need like an extension on this assignment, or do you just need to like take a moment like out in the hall or just sit there for a minute? And they'll like allow you that space instead of being like, why aren't you getting your work done? Or like, can you please stop like moping, I guess. They'll like give you the space and time that you need to like, resolve that in order to like be in the headspace that you need to be to learn. What I also very much enjoy about this school is, like Katie and Karia mentioned, like the student community, how like that relationship with your peers as well as your teachers is so encouraged and like so positive. And like Katie and Karia also said, how like tight knit it is and like it's accepting and you can like be who you are and it's very much less judgmental. And like around my peers and teachers at this school, I know that it's almost a guarantee that I can like come home smiling.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Elle. I see that Mackenzie and Mimi have joined us. So thanks for coming. And I'd love to give the two of you a chance to share a bit about your own personal experience at LCWS at the high school level, if there's anything that you would like to share before we turn it over to questions.
I can go first. I think from the high school standpoint, I've been extremely pleased with Mackenzie's experience at the school. So we were coming from a public school. She started as a sophomore. She was working herself very quickly out of coursework and moving up in grades at the public school she was in. And I was really concerned with her being accelerated out. She was losing peer groups and being mixed. And, you know, I just thought there was a lot of problems with that because she was already a young freshman as it was. And she was going to run out of coursework in her senior year. And I just wasn't very happy with the way things were going. And Mackenzie approached me. She had several friends that had already started. We talked about it the year before, but she wasn't ready for that the year before. And she had friends that had started at the school. And so she approached me about going, and I was really happy with that thought. And we've been very pleased. They challenge her in good ways and push her, which she would not have been pushed in the school she was in. And she has made great connections, which she wasn't doing in her other school, that allow her to develop and grow personally and to be a more thoughtful, introspective, and aware person. So I would say that's a very quick summary of what I've seen from our experience with Lake Champlain Waldorf School. You go.
Okay. So I really love the school. I really love the person I've become, like, because of the school and the school community. I think that it's just a really wonderful place to be. And like, obviously all of the students are really great, and we all have like the really close, tight-knit community that people were talking about. And there's always like that support there, which is really like a good, positive thing to have in my life. But also from like an academic perspective, I like, having taken public school courses and like public school high school courses, I really, really appreciate the structure of the classes that we have here and the way that things are much more open-ended and like self-driven, and you get to have much more of like a say in your education at this school than in my past experiences, which is really lovely. And yeah.
And different formats for learning too, which
Yeah.
make it approachable, even from a lot of different angles. Yeah.
Thank you both so much for sharing your personal experience in that way. So now I'd love to pose some questions to all of you that are being sent in by some of our attendees. And anyone who has not shared a question, please feel free to type it in the Q&A chat feature that is on your screen. There's something specific that you would like to ask of one of our students here, or the parents here, or of the teachers. So the first question that is coming in, okay, this looks like for students. From a student's perspective, how was the transition for you from middle school to high school, or from 8th grade to 9th grade? How did you experience that? Does any of the students who had that experience want to talk about that transition?
I can talk about that for a little.
Go ahead, Elle.
Okay, so like I said, I started in 7th grade. So I guess I don't have like that much of a picture of what the grade school was like. But yeah, I think that it was a relatively smooth transition. Like Miss Fuchs was talking about, there are definitely some similarities and some differences that are pretty apparent for the middle school and high school. But it wasn't like even though we're in like a separate building from the grade school, it didn't feel like we were at like a whole nother school, I suppose. It felt very much like, I don't know, just like it was pretty similar for me. And I know that like other people might have had different experience, but I found it like kind of soothing, I guess, if that makes any sense, to have like, I mean, my middle school class was pretty large, and when I got into high school, there was much less people. Not that that's like a good thing that they left, but like, I don't know. I really like small classes, because then the high school community, there's, I believe, 11 people in the high school currently. And I think that the high school community I found much more tight-knit and accepting than middle school.
Does any of the other students want to speak to that specifically before I ask a different question? Go ahead.
Sure. I said before, I've been at the school for a really long time, and I've had the experience of all the transitions from kindergarten to elementary school, and elementary school to middle school, and now middle school to high school. One of the things I appreciated a lot about the middle school to high school transition is the way the teacher student dynamic changes. I wouldn't say it changes like by a large amount, but the difference between like having a class teacher who's kind of with your whole class, and that's still pretty much your teacher, your go-to person, and having like a larger variety of teachers, and then like an advisor where you can have this personal, like a teacher who is your teacher and who is also there for like as a teacher who is your support person for anything you might need. And I find my advisor is so supportive of my academic needs, and so willing to help and support me in any way that I need. I definitely found that in the middle school as well, but I feel like with the advisee experience in the high school, it's able to be, that level of support is able to be reached on such a deep and beneficial level. That is something I really enjoyed about being in high school, and that's been a really meaningful thing for me to have this year.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question that's coming in is about the structure of classes. One of the students mentioned the comparison of the structure of classes being different from at LCWS than public schools. Can you describe the difference in these classes? I think.
So I think I was the one.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that, Mackenzie?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
So my experience in, I'll just start with my experience in public school. The classes are very like linear in structure, and they're very pre-prescribed. And at my school, they were, at least. I can't speak for everything, but so there was like set goals for like at the end of every week, we were going to get to this point, or at the end of every month or every semester, we're going to get to this point. And regardless of whether or not everyone like truly understood what was happening or like was ready to move on, we reached those points, and like it culminated in like you understood what you understood and you got the grade that was given to you, and the teacher just sort of like moved on regardless of how each individual student was doing. But my experience here has been that one, the teachers really care about the students and about their ability to learn, which is very cool. And also you have a lot more agency in what you're learning about and how you're learning it. So even though like you might still be taking like algebra in 9th grade as your math class, what you're actually learning in that algebra class is going to be tailored to like the class and like you as a member of the class in a way that like fits everyone's learning styles and like what people are actually interested in much more. And it makes it much more like approachable in my experience, and like manageable in terms of like workload and understanding, and also just more enjoyable to learn. Yeah.
And then I would also say something that Mackenzie's said to me in the past is the larger block size and the block focus, as opposed to 10 different or 8 different periods that are much shorter, where you're jumping from subject to subject to subject throughout the day, makes it easier to get into a subject and learn, as opposed to the much shorter classes that you get, or at least we have in our public school, that move you through a number of different subjects throughout the day. And so you're very, disjointed in your learning in very short packets, instead of having more time to delve into subjects at a given point before you have to break.
I would agree with that statement too, Mimi. Like I'd never heard from Ren when she was at the public middle school about what are you learning? What are you guys talking about? What are you studying? I think it was just like skimming off the surface, as opposed to studying in this block format and doing English and history and sociology and math and doing it all together. It's more logical and more natural. And then for them also to be doing trips and sort of being in their bodies at the same time they're learning this information with their heads, or being in their hands and actually making a piece of art in relation to math, or a dress in relation to textiles, or sort of bringing the learning doesn't just take place up here. It's deeper and it's more holistic.
Great, thank you. Another question that's come in is about grading. How are grades done in high school, and how do colleges evaluate LCWS grads? That seems like it might be a question for our teachers, but students, you could certainly take a stab at it if you like.
I'm happy to jump in and do sort of the big overview. The students receive number grades, which translate to a letter grade, starting in 9th grade. And then at the end of their time, they receive a transcript, they have a GPA. It's important to note that as as others were talking about the intensity and the depth of the main lessons, that our main lesson subjects are all considered honors classes by colleges. So students graduate with a transcript that lists all of these honors level classes that they have taken. In terms of how that's received by colleges, I think Amy, you might know more than I, like where students have gone on to, but I'd say that, you know, we have a really excellent college guidance counselor who has worked at the school for many years and has then gone on to continue her business as a college guidance counselor from many students in many different backgrounds. And she is continuing to work with our students. And so really has a real depth of experience of what it takes for students to get into the colleges that they want to get into. And that's really the case for our graduates, that those students who are interested in going to college go where they want to go and where they should end up.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, we're planning to follow up this event with another event where we go a little bit more into depth about some of those details, but I can share that we have done some, we've pulled some data from our college guidance counselor, and we've also polled our alumni in the past few years. And we know that 95% of our graduates do attend a four-year college or university. About 47% choose humanities or the arts as their major, and 42% choose sciences or math as a major. We have a list on our website, an extensive list on our website that has the colleges that our students have been attending in the past. And we also know that the SAT scores, the average SAT scores of our students are significantly higher than those of other Vermont schools, and on par with Vermont Commons and Rice Memorial High School, if not a little bit higher. So we know that even though we have this perception of being a very arts-focused school, the academics are very strong, and our students' choices of study and where they go on to study, that plays out, that shows in that data. I wonder if I could put it back to you, Mackenzie, as a senior, if you could talk a little bit about that process, the college guidance process, and what you've been experiencing in the past year or so as you've gotten ready for that. Is that something that you'd be comfortable talking about?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's definitely a bit of an overwhelming process, but I imagine it would be considerably more overwhelming, or just as overwhelming at least, at any other school. So I think that Alice is very lovely, and like she starts talking to you early. So like at the early to middle of junior year, she like met up with everyone. And like by January of junior year, she had given everyone like a list of lots of colleges that she thought that we'd be interested in. And I will say that I've already applied to one from that list, and I'm planning on applying to like 4 or 5 more. And that was like without any real feedback. That was just like her picking the colleges that she thought would be right for me. And so obviously the application process is a bit strenuous, but anywhere you go. Although I will say that like I've been doing a lot of interviews recently, and having the Waldorf school has definitely been an interesting topic of conversation. All of the like admissions people are very interested in hearing about the Waldorf school, and I've talked about main lessons I've talked about at least 1 or 2 main lessons in every interview that I've done, for probably a total of like 20 minutes each. And so if you don't feel like you're very good at coming up with conversation topics, it definitely gives you something to talk about there. Yep.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
Yeah, I would say one thing to that is that, you know, the small size of the school allows a lot of personal knowledge of the individual student. And so I think when Mackenzie talked about, you know, Alice having the opportunity to know her because she's not dealing with 100 other students, and being able to help put some quality schools in front of us that that she felt Mackenzie would do well with were actually really good matches is a sign of how well she knows each of the students and can really help them fast track through that selection process.
Thank you very much. So another question that we have here is about the social environment. How are the students having their social needs met in this smaller school environment? And talk about the benefits of this smaller school environment on a social level.
Katie and I will take this. So as I said, I came from like a pretty toxic school, and I felt that none of my needs were being really met. But at LCWS, there's definitely a certain care that everybody takes when interacting with each other. So there's definitely more thought put into interactions. People ask, hey, how are you doing, if you seem a bit down, including teachers, which is super nice that they have the ability to give that attention. And students as well do that, and we all find ways to support each other. And since the school is so small, we all know each other really well, and it's very easy to communicate with each other. I feel that the social structure of the day gives us time to socialize and also to focus on our academics, not to a point that it can become super stressful though. And I also feel that the way we are taught, yes, the way we are taught to interact with each other, just from seeing our teachers interact with each other so nicely and interact with parents and other students so nicely, really sets a great example. And yeah, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, we were actually just talking about kind of what Karya said today in our Unbound class, which is like a social justice oriented class where we explore social justice in all different areas on every level, from like worldwide and to a very deep personal level. And we were talking about the social construct of asking someone how they're doing, and not just to ask, and not really wanting to hear how they're actually doing. And I feel like in my experience at this school, people ask me how I'm doing, and they come up to me and they ask me how I'm doing, and they want to hear, and they're there and supportive and willing to listen to how I'm doing, like regardless of how I'm doing. It's not just a pleasantry exchange to be polite. It's a honest interest and willingness to listen and care for other people's emotional needs, physical needs. It's I really love that about the school. And I don't know, I have not had an experience of going to another school, so I don't know what it would be like there, but that is something I really love about the school.
I think that that's very accurate, and I also would like to add that at a public school, you feel rather lost, and like Jen said, like you're in a sea of faces, and you definitely there's a sorry just turned me there's a certain visibility that you feel at LCWS, which I think is insanely valuable to education. Thank you.
I'll just add to that.
I'd like to add to that.
Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, thank you. I think part of why we came here was looking for connections. Connection was so important. And we know how important social connection is to mental health, and the needs of teenagers right now. We hear about the mental health needs of teenagers. There's a lot of needs out there right now, and we were so just it makes it just it's very it makes us very happy to see. I'm getting emotional. I said I wouldn't cry on this, but to see the connection that our student is having socially, and is so healing and important for mental health. And so, and academics and learning come from like a mental health perspective. In order to grow, right, we want to have good mental health and to learn. And the social connections that are happening and that are supported, and really in an intentional way are supported, is just such a solid foundation and a rich, fertile foundation for incredible academic growth. So I'll get my Kleenex now.
I would just add too that I think that we all gravitate towards our people, and I think that just by virtue of choosing LCWS, we're sort of our people. Like I went to a school with 400 people in my class and spent the majority of my time sort of avoiding some or seeking my people. And so then I had my core group of people I would follow up with afterwards. But I will say for our students, they come home and they reach out to these same people. There's a group text, right? Like they leave school and immediately start group texting or reaching out to one another. Or when Ren and Mackenzie and Bevan went away on a field trip and met all these other Waldorf students, they're still friends with those Waldorf students. Like last weekend we spent with 2 Waldorf students from totally different schools. You're just sort of by nature your people, so you find this common ground and you know and understand one another. So it doesn't really matter that there's so few. It's the quality, not the quantity. Yeah.
And if I can add a little bit to that, it is that like these are like you find your people, but we're all our own individual people. And because it is such a small school, there isn't really any space for like any clickiness or really like groups to form. And so there isn't that pressure that you might feel in another school to like conform or to like act as in a way that like isn't truly yourself in order to like fit in or to like belong, because we are all so different and there's so few of us that we all belong automatically. So it really is like a safe space to like find yourself and like experiment. Like you can, if you want to try like a new style, you can like wear whatever style you want. Or if you want to try out some new pronouns, because you want to try out some new pronouns, everyone will support you. So it's just like a very safe space to find who you are, and there isn't really any judgment from anyone else. They're all your friends and everyone cares about you and like will support you through all of your decisions, unless they're bad decisions, and then we'll tell you they're bad decisions and try to stop.
Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing so genuinely. Another question that I have is about the main lesson content. Can any of the students describe a fascinating main lesson that you have experienced and why you enjoyed it so much?
Can I speak to that? It's kind of hard to pick this one. I think this was our second block of this year. We had an astronomy block. And like my parents are both like sciencey nature people, and so like I kind of knew some stuff about astronomy, but like we like really went into a depth about like the stars and like their movements and like their historical and like cultural significance. And like I can't imagine learning any of that at the public school that I went to. Like if you mentioned something about the stars, people would be like, what's the North Star? Is that like, I don't know. It's just like the depth that we learned it at, and like, I don't know. I just really like science, and it was nice to like come to this school and be able to like learn chemistry for 3 weeks for like 2 hours in the morning, and then go on to like learn something completely different, like history of textiles. I don't know. I'm kind of just ranting at this point, but it's really cool.
Thank you, Elle. Any other students want to add?
Yeah. I would just like to speak to the engagement in main lesson that I feel. Each block is so different, and I've only been here for 3 total blocks so far. But in each one I felt like genuine connection and interest in the subject, and I don't feel like I'm going to school just to get through a day. I'm like genuinely excited about learning about whatever it is we're learning. For example, we had history of textiles, which I enjoyed greatly, and we went on trips, and we went to a wool mill and to go see ancient textiles, and it was just so engaging and really interesting content in each one. So I think that that's something that's very special for me about that.
I would say that the level of engagement that the teachers show with the topics that we're exploring is so lovely. You can tell how much they enjoy teaching these things, and we do such deep dives into such specific topics. And I don't know, I know so many little things that I'm like, whoa, because I learned this one day when we were doing this. We were learning so many things, and we just kept going into these cool topics. I love the way that the learning is approached with like, there is a structure to it, but we're also so free to like branch off and say, you know what, I'm really interested in this. Maybe could we spend more time talking about this, and we can have like a class conversation about something that we're learning, and like a full discussion, not just like a lecture, which is another thing I appreciate, because the main lessons are more discussion types and less of lectures. But the engagement of the teachers in the blocks has been one of my favorite things this year. They seem so happy to be teaching us. It kind of rubs off on me, and it's very fun. I enjoy it a lot. I appreciate it a lot about the teachers here.
Thank you so much. So we are at the end of our hour. I do want to just thank everyone so much for coming tonight and for sharing your perspectives, and just give one last chance to anyone is there something burning that you didn't get to share that you were hoping to be able to share, either parent, student, or teacher? Give you one last chance to chime in with that thing that you meant to say that you didn't say.
I'll say really quickly, there is a question in the chat about clubs and extracurriculars.
Oh, thank you.
And I think this ties really nicely into what the students were saying about their social engagement. A lot of the clubs are student-led, so they change every year, and it depends on what the students really want and are bringing out of their own interest. And also there are some faculty-led clubs as well. For example, I lead Tea Appreciation Club. So it's a place where students again can have some choice in what they want to help build and create, not just in the academic realm, but also in the social realm as well. And there are sports too, but I'm not the one to ask about that.
I would love to be a reference if anyone has any further questions. I'm happy to chat further with anyone who's interested. And it was really lovely to hear all the students and other parents and faculty. First, it's nice to see everyone's whole face. And second, it's nice just to hear y'all's perspective. So thank you.
Agreed. Thank you, Jen. And it is great to see everyone's whole face. And go ahead.
I love the way our class meetings are approached in high school. We we all sit in a circle together. We do some announcements. When it's somebody's birthday, we go around and do appreciations for them, and it's so lovely. I look forward to that class, which is kind of new to me. It's such a lovely and personal, like, kind of checkup at the end of the week. It's a very lovely way to close out the week, and I really enjoy it.
Thank you for mentioning that. Class meeting is a really special part of the Waldorf approach and so important at the high school level. So thank you all so much again for coming tonight. And anyone who is attending who would like to be connected with Jen or any of the other parents and students here for follow-up questions, please reach out to me and I will connect you. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh my goodness, I'm still on.